So probably the most important factor in seeing how a man and woman interact with each other. I'm going to talk about that in this video. It's part of the 20% of methods that give 80% of the results in relationship astrology. So I'm talking today about the most important relationship factor that you need to see. And it actually has been in all of the Vedic astrology relationship books. The ancient texts that talked about, especially what's called the nakshatra kuta matching, they have one of the conditioning matching facets is called Sri Dirgha, which means the distance to the woman. And again, this is in all of the Vedic astrology texts. This wasn't, discovered by someone recently or whatever. This has been a well-known principle. Again, there's a text called Muhurta Chintamani, which describes Sri Dirgha. There's a book called Kali Prakashika, which describes Sri Dirgha. The famous Indian astrologer B.V. Raman talked about this in his relationship astrology texts. So it literally shows the masculine-feminine flow. And it's the main principle in relationship matching that has to be in place for there to be a harmonious vibe and rhythm with the couple. And without a doubt, it's the biggest factor overall. And we have to look at it in many different ways when we do relationship astrology matching. But one of the most, important ways to do it is in the Vedic Kuta system. Again, the Kutas are the nakshatra matching, is you have to see if the shortest distance is from the man's moon to the woman's moon, then you will at least see that there is a harmonious emotional flow in the couple. And this harmonious emotional flow in the couple will ensure that the woman feels like she's receiving, like she's on the receiving end and being empowered to be receptive, and that the man feels like he's empowered to initiate, to be in the initiating role. And when that happens, again, there's just a naturally harmonious vibe that's set up. And this reinforces that gender identity that both, people in the relationship are trying to experience. And as I say, relationships are really where we're trying to connect in a positive way with our gender. So again, stereotypically, and for the most part, relationships are a heterosexual man to a woman, but even in gay relationships, there's the same principles of masculine and feminine. They're just a little more fluid. But in no small part, a man in a relationship is trying to experience and know himself as a man, which means to be in that initiating, confident role where the things he does brings joy and love and life to the ones that he wants to bring it to. And the way he can see that, especially with the woman, is that the energy he puts forth gets reflected back to him in a positive way. So again, for the woman, the way she experiences that as she's trying to, bond with her nature as a feminine creature is to have the power and the courage to be receptive. The power to be receptive and to receive and to trust a man enough to be in the receptive role. And then as she's in that receptive role, it is then reflected back and he feels, joyful to receive that reflection, and that harmonious vibe is there. And so again, this bonding through a positive gender experience is very much probably the most important factor to look at overall. And we see it in many different ways. One of the most immediate, particularly in the Kuta matching, is with that man's moon being in the initiating role from the woman's. And in the classical text, it's spelled out very clearly. It's spelled out in nakshatras. And it'll wind up saying things like, the man's nakshatra has to be, in the, less than 13 from the woman, which means if it's less than 13 from the woman, then it's closer to the woman. And that means that the distance to the woman is shorter from the man to the woman. So that's what the Sidereal means. But again, it's the same principle is set up in many different ways. And so, this is one of those 80-20 rules and principles that I'm going to be showing and unraveling in the Relationships 80-20 course that's coming up. And again, it's really just focusing and concentrating on the highest leverage principles that yield most of the results, so that all the things that we can be looking at, we don't get too distracted. Because again, one of the biggest problems with trying to learn something and practice it correctly is there are so many things we can be looking at, and we tend to think they're all about equally important to everything else. And this is just not true. This is why in this case and in that weekend course, it's going to be the 80-20. If you don't remember this, it just reinforces the idea that 20% of the methods or concepts yield about 80% of the results. And this is certainly one of that 20% that you need to concentrate on. And it's going to be, more important than, let's say, one of the kutas, what if we don't have, Mahendra or Vasya kuta or whatever else it might be, or what if this is there, or his Mercury is in a trine to my whatever. Yeah, all of it kind of matters, but these are the kinds of things that are the most important that you need to not get, that you need to focus on, and that you need to be wary of getting distracted from. And again, that's not the only way to look at it. It's not just the initiating, energy of the man toward the woman, but then there's all the other things that would influence gender. And so, again, this is one of the most important principles. And again, the principle is also reinforced in non-astrological concepts, right? Even in writings like the Kama Sutra and the all Indian tantric Shiva Shakti, the power to initiate, the power to receive, that flow between those two things, the sun and the moon, even in a natal chart. And again, so once you get beyond analyzing the individual for their potentialities, then you get into seeing how does that individual, whether it's a man or a woman, how is their energy to be either empowered to be the receptive pole or empowered to be the initiating pole, whether they're a man or a woman. How do you take that forward, right? So very important, very pivotal thing to look at in relationship astrology, and these principles and how to execute them through the techniques are going to yield like 80% of the results. And then you fill in the other things too. You'll wind up seeing the other things often as supportive or in a supportive role to the highest leverage techniques. So if you're interested again in learning these things, go ahead and click the link below to get the course on Relationships 80-20. Not only are you going to learn how to read these in charts, but you're going to learn these principles about yourself. Because again, one of the most important things that we can do in relationships is our self-knowledge, how we are behaving in a relationship and why we're this way, that thing that we bring to it all the time. There are things, again, first it's you and what you're bringing to all of your relationships. Then there's how you are interacting with other individuals. Once you get involved, you lay the two charts, the synastry, and then there are the deeper connections that refer back to the deeper Indian concepts and whatnot. So again, this concept of the Sri Dirg and the distance to the woman is a universal Indian concept. It's been around forever, not just in Vedic astrology texts, but also in other Indian texts. But again, it's right in the classical, Kuta matching text, as well as classical writers have talked about this. And these days it's reinforced by all of the modern relationship gurus and teachers that also teach these empowering, masculine, feminine relationship models that we're reawakening to. So I hope you enjoyed this. Share this video if it helps you, and we'll see you soon, hopefully in the Relationships 80/20 course.